Hello everybody, welcome to my first installment of a series I'm making, trying to teach you how to script from basically nothing. So I'm not going to be explaining how to use Studio too much, but you should naturally pick up on how to after you do this for a while. But I will teach you the basics. So first we're going to need a part, because we're going to try to change the properties of a part. We're going to actually make it half invisible for this exercise. So we're going to click on this part. Up here in home, if you click on the part, just click on this cube part, it'll automatically drag one for you. Then select it. Oh, and also moving in the studio is hold right click and move your mouse, and WASD will also move you. If you select something and hit F, you'll teleport to it. Just basic movement. Add a script to part, so just do this plus sign and then go to script. And then in this script, don't worry about print hello world yet, we'll get to that later. We'll do game dot, I'll explain all this by the way, game.workspace.part. So basically, to understand this, I want you to just look here. So what we're doing is we're telling the computer where the part is we want to change, because we want to change the properties of this particular part, but the script doesn't know what this part is, what are we trying to change. So first we're trying to find the part, and to do that we type this. And how this works is there's a thing called parent-child relationships. This is the parent of all these children. So whenever you see an arrow that can drop down and there's an indent, that means all the indented ones are children of workspace. And script would be a child of part, and part's parent would be workspace. Game just means the entire game. So everything here is a child of game, because game covers all of these. It's a parent to all of these. So the dot, the period, means look for a child. So we're saying game, look for a child of game called workspace, which is here. So it goes here. And then we're saying look for the child called part, so it goes here to part. So we find part. So now we have the part. Now we want to change a property. So whenever you click on a part, it should pull up this properties tab. If it doesn't, make sure that this properties thing is enabled on view. And you can look through the properties. And for this, we're going to change the transparency to 0.5. So you can experiment with this in the main area, and you can just kind of slide the transparency, see what you want, so you know what number you want to change it to. I'm going to change it to 0.5, sort of half transparent. So we're going to do dot, and then we're not trying to really find a child of part right now. We're not, because this is the only child. We're doing a property. So you just do dot, and then that'll let the script know you're trying to change a property. But of course, you actually have to use a valid property name. So we're trying to change transparency. So we should do dot transparency, because we're trying to change the transparency of this part. So now it knows that it's basically selected this, and it knows that's what we're trying to change. So now we do an equal sign to set it to a new value. So we're going to be setting it to 0.5. And now, if we make this one completely not transparent, but we hit play, then now in the game it's transparent, because we changed it with the script. That's just how to change transparency, which uses a number value, because it's 0 to 1 for transparency, right? But not everything's going to use a value like that, because reflectance would, there's a few other ones that probably would, but what about something like can collide? Can collide basically means if you turn off can collide, then it can't collide with players, so people can just walk through it. My bad, I forgot another property we should discuss. Anchor up here, it's also I believe here, anchored. This means it won't move. If you turn off can collide, the reason why we didn't see it is it literally doesn't collide, so it fell through the floor. Anchored just means it won't move on its own, so it would fall through the floor if it wasn't anchored, but since it's anchored, it won't move, so it won't fall through the floor. So now we could walk through it because we turned can collide off, so can collide is a very useful property if you want to make doors or something, right? But obviously we can't change can collide with a number, because can collide equals 0. That doesn't really make sense. So for something like can collide, game.workspace. We're just finding the part again, and this time we're gonna refer to can collide because that's what we're trying to change, right? And let me just put everything back to normal in here. Put can collide back on, and we'll keep it anchored. That's useful. And then how would we change it? So whenever you see like a check mark like this, it means it's a Boolean value, and a Boolean basically just means true or false. So true is like checked and false is unchecked. So you could sort of think of it as true is like yes and false is like no, just at like a basic level, I guess. But basically, true is like it's checked and false is it's unchecked. So we're gonna do false because we don't want it to collide. So when we do set it to false, it'll uncheck it when we run our script. So if we play now, then we can walk through the part. Now if we would set it to like true, let's say we set it to true, then we would not be able to walk through it anymore because it can collide. Okay, so there is one more value that that you should know about, and it's really not related to changing the properties, but it's a very important type of value, and it's called a string value, which is just text basically. So whenever you're doing a string, you put it in quotation marks, and this just lets the computer know that like this is a string, like this is text. So then you would say hello. So if you'll recall, like when you opened your script, it probably said print hello world. So print is just a command basically that will print a string inside of it. So the string can be high. So it does have to be a string, or it won't print. And a string, like I said, is a text value, and it's always in quotation marks. So if we ran this, it would do that, but it would also print high down here in the output. If you don't see the output, go to view and then make sure this is turned on, output. So those are like the main properties you need to know. Numbers, booleans, and text or string. I mean, I'm okay if you call it like a text value, but you should call it a string. I'm just kind of saying like text or true or false just for the sake of like understanding, but like after this tutorial, I'm going to be referring to these as boolean and this as string. So using this, I want you to make a like on your own, I want you to make a part that, what's another value? Yeah, okay. On your own, I want you to change anchored to be off, but using the script, you can't change it here. Using the script, I want you to turn anchored off. And also change can collide to true so it doesn't just fall through the map. Okay, so the solution for that is basically the same as can collide. We're just doing game.workspace.part.anchored equals false, and now it won't be anchored. So if we hit play, we could even move it around because it's not stuck in position, although it's going to be hard to move in because how small it is. But just to let me show you that it works, if we like make it bigger, I will be able to push it around. See, I can push it around because not can collide, but anchored's turned off. So if yours works, you should be able to push it around like this. But this is the line of code. So I'm going to include this in this lesson. This is kind of wordy, right? Like if we wanted to change a property, every time we have to do game.workspace.part. And like this, it's kind of annoying to type out. So there's a better way to do this. There's a thing called a variable. And with a variable, you can store information under a name. So in a variable, we could find a part and then just call that variable's name every time instead of having to find the part again and again. Because what it's doing here is it's finding the part each time. It'd be much better if we could just store the part once and then access that like stored information, right? So to make a variable, we need to give it a name, and this name can be literally anything you want. So you can do name equal, you can just do name, or like even like green. You can even do like nugget. Just make sure it's not like, make sure the name of the variable isn't gonna be like something that exists. Like there's commands, so like for example, for is a command, so don't use like something like for, because it thinks you're using a command, it doesn't think you're making a name. So just name it like whatever you want, but I'm gonna do name equals, and then what it equals. So basically, if we put this to game.workspace.part, and let's do a better name. You can name it whatever you want, but just for the sake of like clarity and like making your code easy to read, let's name it part, because that's what this is. So now we're saying whenever we say part, we mean game.workspace.part. Part is now equal to game.workspace.part. So instead of having to call game.workspace.part every time, we can just do part.transparency. And that's much easier. So you can go ahead and get rid of all of these and do part.transparency. Wait, my bad. Part.canCollide. And then just part.encode. My bad. Oh yeah, I forgot. This is a good thing to mention. I'm glad we noticed this. So make sure that the capitalization matches. So if you make a variable called part with a lowercase p and try to call it with a capital P, it's not going to work, because it doesn't recognize it. This is a separate character to the script. It's case sensitive. So make sure the capitalization matches, or it won't know what you're talking about. So this does the same thing, but it's just a lot better. And now, like, if we wanted to change the part, we can just do it here. Let's say we change the name of the part, because the part is like a kind of a bad name. Say like main part, right? Because part's kind of a bad name, because like we could have more than one part, and maybe we had to change the name so it would work. That's believable. So we could just change up here using it like this. We could just change this to main part, and now every time we say part, it's gonna get the main part. If we had it the way we had it before, we would have to go here for each individual one and change it to main part, which is just a hassle. So now, so that's how you make like a variable, and also variables can be equal to any value. It doesn't just have to be like objects like a part. But this is probably like how you're gonna use them most of the time. But you could even say like part equals a string that says hi, and then print. And then instead of doing print hi, you could, which would work, it would print hi. You could just do print part, and now it's gonna print part, which is equal to hi. So you don't need to put this in strings. You actually shouldn't, because if I put this in strings, but did I say, if I put this in quotation marks, it's just gonna print the word part. But we want it to print whatever part is equal to. So if we do print part, it checks what part's equal to. Part's equal to hi. If we run this, it's gonna print hi. It prints hi. And of course you can also have it equal to like numbers, you know, like 0, or like we can have like level equals 0, you know, or something like maybe like has game pass. It can also be like a Boolean value, so it can be has game pass equals true. Stuff like that. And variables are really useful for storing information and just not like repeating yourself multiple times. And there's a lot other more advanced uses. But make sure when you define a variable, just for now, you always put local before it. It's kind of just good practice for Roblox. It's not technically required. Like you could do name equals gamer, and that will work just fine. Name will be equal to gamer. But it's going to basically be a global variable, meaning for every script, name is equal to gamer. So I could call this from another script and it would work, which is like, it's not wrong necessarily, but it's really slow to do this. Like it could slow down your code if you're doing this. So it's usually unnecessary. So it's just better practice to do local, name equals gamer. And that just means it'll only be local to this script. So only for this particular script, name is equal to gamer, and it's much faster, and it's just generally recommended to only use like local variables like this when you're making Roblox games. So I would always just put local before your variable name, but remember it's not technically required. So if you were to do print name, now it'll print gamer.